Training camp is right around the corner. That means football season is almost here. And woo, I am excited for this upcoming season. But wait a minute. Let me not get too excited. But before this season starts, I want to discuss some players who need to step up this year. We're expecting big things from several players, and we're going to dive into it tonight. Let's get it. You know why you're here. Let's talk Ravens with Yolanda. Let's go. A healthy balance at every position. If they brought in Derrick Henry, because the Ravens aren't serious. Eric DeCosta's make or break season, off season. Good evening, Ravens flock. How are we doing tonight? It's been a couple of weeks since I've been live and I've missed you. And I said, oh no, we have to come back and round table together and round up the troops and the family and just let's talk Ravens football. We're getting close to the start of the season, or at least the training camp. So once I hear training camp is right here, I know that it's not far off. That means we're really close. So I'm getting excited. It's been a long several months since we've seen Lamar Jackson and these Baltimore Ravens in action. I want to see what we are, who we are as an identity, who we are as a team. But, first things first, we have to go through training camp and then into preseason. And then shortly after that, we kick off the season. But tonight's show, I really want to dedicate in terms of where I think we are as a team and what players I have seen that give me a little bit of, I'm not going to say concern, but maybe that is the right word. And some of them, maybe there's a measurable, maybe there's a level, right? Some of the players are not as nerve-wracking to me, but certainly they made the list. So we'll talk about those players because this year, I think I coined the phrase earlier in the offseason. I said the Ravens this year, we are hashtag chasing the Lombardi. That's right. And so in order for us to do that, I need to see some results. I need to see a leap from last year to this year for some of the players. And I want to hear from you. If you are in the chat, I want to hear from you. And if you are watching on replay, thank you. Please leave a comment down below as we go through tonight's show. If there are players that you feel that you want to see, how are they going to demonstrate this year that they have made that jump? They've taken that next step and they're ready. But before we dive into tonight's show, as customary here, I want to say a warm welcome and good evening to everyone who has already joined in the chat. Okay. First person in the chat, always first. We've got Brandon Bazel. Hi there, good evening. I know that he is celebrating his 1-year anniversary. Congratulations to you on 1 year. Many, many more. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being here. Please make sure you go over to Brandon Bazel's channel where he gives you that great content on food review. Speaking of, we need to see more of you, Brandon. Haven't seen you around these real and digital streets lately, so hoping you're coming back very soon. We also have my guy from the Woo Pig podcast. Thank you so much for joining. It's good to see you. I hope you're well, and thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying the new graphics. Awesome. Thank you. We also have Low217. Great content. Yolanda, keep doing your thing. Thank you so much. Good evening to you. I hope you are doing just fine tonight. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into these topics. Who must prove it on offense? we're going to start with the offense. And this is where I'd like to hear from you in the chat and on replay if you happen to be watching it on replay. I'm going to go through a couple of players that I think are very critical to our success as we chase this Lombardi this year. And I think these are just, in my opinion, now I'm sure we could have added more, but in my opinion, these are some of the players that I really want to see. Have they demonstrated a level of improvement? So the first person who's got to prove it to me this year on offense, Ronnie Stanley. And I think we all know that he made my list, and he might be on yours too, but he made my list for obvious reasons. This is a player who has not stayed healthy. He's just not been even a shell of himself, really, since his injury a few seasons ago. And I know during the off season, there were, pressers, and we heard from him, and he said that he's getting healthier and stronger every day. And I think even Harbaugh mentioned that, Ronnie Stanley, he's looking good. He's out there, he's moving about, and he's looking really good. I hear that, and I really want to believe that. But because we haven't seen that level of consistency from him, because we've seen a lot of setbacks from his injuries, that's why he made the list. He has to prove it, not necessarily that he can prove that he can play, because I still think even if we don't get the version of Ronnie pre-injury, even if we don't get that, I think that his level of contribution, if he is healthy, will be substantially better than what we are as a team when he's not on the field. Now, that said, that's my biggest question for Ronnie. He has to prove it to me that he can stay healthy, because when he is healthy, we're ready to chase the Lombardi. And I don't fear and I don't worry about Lamar Jackson's blind side as much as I do when he's not on the field. So that's why Ronnie made the list for me, which leads me to, to talk about the backup for Ronnie. Excuse me. So the backup for Ronnie, as it stands right now, is Pat McCary. Okay, Pat McCary. How comfortable do we feel about having Pat McCary if we need him to start a few games? He can hold his own. I think he can hold his own. So that is for me and this left tackle situation, I really want to see the demonstration from Ronnie that he's ready, that he's healthy, and that he can do it. And I think he can. I hope so. But he's still got to prove it to me. The next person who made the list of players who I feel must, who have to prove it, Andrew Voorhees. I did not include rookies that we just drafted on this list because they don't really, I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know what they're going to contribute, how they're going to contribute, if at all. I don't know what their level of contribution is. So I did on purpose. I did not include any rookies that we just drafted. Although technically Voorhees sort of fits the mold for that in terms of, although, yes, true enough, he is not a rookie. We did not draft him this past offseason. However, we did take him two off seasons ago during the draft. And when we drafted him, we drafted an injured player. And this is an example of the Baltimore Ravens signing or drafting injured players with a hope of return on investment. That is dangerous. It's risky, but we'll see what we get. So for Andrew Voorhees, although technically, like I said, not a rookie, we've never seen what he can do. Now, I know coming out of college, he was highly thought of as, a great pass blocking. He was great in college. How will that translate into the NFL? That remains to be seen. So that's why Andrew Voorhees is on the prove it list. But not only that, he's also on the he must prove it list because he's coming off of a major injury. Yes, he had an entire season last year to rehab, to recover. Of course, absolutely. And hopefully the coaching staff, the trainers, they took their time with him and they're getting him to where he needs to be because we're going to need him. That offensive line has to be ready. They have to be stout. They have to be in position to defend and to protect and to make sure that Lamar has enough time to do what Lamar Jackson can do. They've also got to be ready to protect and block for King Henry. Because yes, we have King Henry, and we have Lamar Jackson, but if the offensive line isn't holding up, how good are we? Sure, I know Lamar Jackson is that X factor who, if we have him, then we're already a much better team and we're already in a much better position to win the game and to succeed. But let's not have to have him shoulder the entire load in this year. Let him be able to equally distribute the workload and divide it up amongst everyone who is standing on that field and an offensive position because they're healthy, number one, and they're prepared, number two. The coaches have trained them, coached them up, and they are ready to go. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll see. Andrew Voorhees, you got to prove it. You have to prove it. Just because we don't know what we're going to get from you. The next person who made my list is Ben Cleveland. Now, Ben Cleveland, let me say this. When I looked at Ben Cleveland last year, I was not totally disappointed. And I went back and I looked up his stats. He played last season 162 snaps. He had 1 penalty, 0 sacks allowed on his watch. Wonderful. His grade, PFF graded him at a 68.2. My concern with Ben Cleveland, he just seems to me a bit stiff and robotic. But if he can work on that, and because we're going to put a greater workload on him than he had last year, backing up Zeitler. And now with Zeitler gone, we're going to ask Ben Cleveland to take that step. We're going to ask Ben Cleveland, we're going to call his number, and he needs to be ready. So I know we have Josh Jones as, a depth piece, and Josh Jones, I believe, has played every position on that offensive line except for center. So this is a plug and play person in Josh Johnson, just in case we're not seeing what we need to see out of Ben Cleveland. But he certainly Ben Cleveland made my list because I didn't see enough consistent play from him that made me feel settled and easy when he is protecting and being that wall for my quarterback. So that's why I had Ben Cleveland on the list. While I'm not going to say that, oh gosh, he's horrible, he's terrible. No, I don't think that. I just need to see him prove that he has taken a leap, a step up from last year to this one. And if he has, we're good to go. I think we're solid. I think we're okay. And I will make a note here because 2 of the players that I have on offense happen to be offensive linemen. There's been a lot of talk that I've heard about the coach, Joe, and I know I'm going to botch his name. I know I'm going to mess it up. D'Alessandris, how he is able to develop talent, how he is able to really take talent that's raw and make it masterful. So he's got his hands, he's got his work cut out for him. He's got a lot on his plate, not in terms of Ben Cleveland, Ronnie Stanley per se, but more importantly, and we'll talk shortly in a bit about the depth chart. We'll take a look at that in just a bit, because when we talk about our offensive line, we've got a lot of depth pieces that to me are question marks. Sala, Falele. Those are some of our pieces that may at some point have to be called, their number might have to be called up. And so, Joe, D'Alessandris, developing talent, I hear is your thing. You've got your work cut out for you with those, with a couple of them. And the last offensive player that I had that made the list, the last one here for me is Rashod Bateman. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time with this. The reason Rashod Bateman gives me concern is not because I don't think that he is a great player. I do. I'm not going to take that away from Rashod. But what concerns me is at the start of the offseason, we came on here and we talked and we discussed, there's plenty of time left in this offseason. Lamar Jackson and Rashod Bateman have plenty of opportunity to work on and develop that chemistry. And that's wonderful. And we talked about, let's hope we're going to see that this offseason. Other wide receivers were getting together, going down to South Florida. I know that's not Rashod Bateman's home. I understand that. And I understand that this is the offseason. You can't mandate someone to go down to South Florida and practice with the quarterback. You can't. But to see Zay Flowers, to see, I believe Nelson Aguilar even went down at some point. But to see the receivers going down to South Florida to practice with the quarterback is something that I love to see. And I was hopeful that we would see that in Rashod Bateman, primarily because, as I said earlier, I don't have a concern about Rashod Bateman being a great player. Yes, he can run routes, but how good is that? And what benefit is that to us if the timing is not there between he and the quarterback? What does that do for us if he is a crisp route runner, if he can get separation? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if there is a split-second differential between the quarterback and that receiver, that split second can be a game changer. And that is what I'm looking for Rashod Bateman. That's why his name is on the list. He must prove it. I know we have to, give him the benefit of the doubt. He's been injured for a significant portion of his time here in the NFL. That's true. Absolutely is true. But the times where he has been healthy, I've not seen a consistent demonstration that he and Lamar are on the same page. And I don't know if it's just me, but I don't see where, or I don't feel, let me say it that way. I don't feel that Rashod Bateman's head right now is in the game. And when I say in the game, I've seen him on social media practicing. So it's not that I think that he's just not taking it seriously. No, it's not that at all. And I saw him doing the hurdles earlier this week, and someone said that I think he was doing some kind of audition for some pogo sticks. People are just so creative. Pogo sticks. I laughed at that. But my point is, I do think he is trying. I do think that he is working out, and I do think he's trying to stay fit and stay in shape and be football ready. But that doesn't negate the fact that when he and Lamar get together, there is a problem. And that problem is what I want to see remedied. And I'll take 2.5 and I'll say this. There's nothing like the present moment. And being present in the moment is so powerful because you only have now. You only have the power of right now. Yesterday is gone and you can't bring it back. Tomorrow is not promised. So all you have is the present moment, and that's where you have to seize your opportunity. And now, to me, for Rashod Bateman, the spotlight is on him. He's wide receiver number 2. The front office believes in him. They believe heavily in Rashod's ability. And dare I say, Lamar Jackson believes in him. I just want to see it. I just want to feel comfortable and not be on pins and needles when I see Lamar Jackson, Rashod Bateman. Is this going to work? Is this going to connect? Are we going to have a connection? Are we going to have something? Only to be disappointed. I don't want to see that. I'll take a couple of seconds because I do see a couple of other people have joined, and I want to say hello and give a warm welcome to those who are in the chat. Dwayne Shepard, thank you for joining. Good to see you. I hope you're well. Thank you. Keep up the great work, Jaylon. I certainly will. Please do me a favor if you have not already. If you are here and you're enjoying the show, please make sure to hit the like button. It does a lot for the channel. It's very helpful. So just take 2 seconds, hit the like button for me. I greatly appreciate it. We also have Jared Green in the house. Please make sure to go over to Jared Green's channel. And if I didn't say it earlier, I don't think I did. But let me say about Jared Green. He did an amazing live stream over the weekend. It was so much fun. It was defensive ends, and you were creating, throughout the history of the NFL or throughout, your time of watching the NFL, who are your top 5 defensive ends? And then from there, he narrowed it down. That was hard enough already, right? That was tough to just narrow it down to 5 because there's so many good ones. But beyond that, he said, okay, well, let's take it down. Now give me your top 4. And that was tough. It's like, oh, wait, I forgot about Ndamukong Suh, and I forgot about this one. And oh gosh, I didn't think about that one. And it was such a struggle to just really try and compile that list, that short list of excellent top players in the NFL. So that was really fun. So make sure you go over and give him a like and a follow. I did not say it earlier, but I will say it now. The Woo Pig podcast, please go over to the Woo Pig podcast where you're going to get everything Arkansas, what are the Razorbacks? I was going to say something else, but yes, go over and listen to them. They are a wonderful group of gentlemen who dissect the sports on a collegiate level for football and basketball. Head over to the Woo Pig podcast. You're going to enjoy it. We have with us tonight, good evening, Florence. We have Miss Equip Institute. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining. Good to see you, and I hope you are well. Also, we have Jose with us tonight. He is one half of Lunch Break Hot Take. He and his brother, Brodney, do a show, a remarkable show, every Wednesday night at 7:15 Eastern Time. You don't want to miss it because Brodney is a Ravens fan. Brodney is a Panthers fan, and Jose is a Ravens fan. But they don't just limit their content to Panthers and Ravens. They talk everything. So WNBA, they're talking wrestling, and they talk everything. So just go over, make sure you hit the like button, give them a follow. You'll thank me later. So and with that is the end of my list of players who I think really need to step up and improve on offense. Let me know in the chat if you agree with anyone on this list, or if you have a differing of opinion, if you think somebody else from offense needs to show you that they are ready and that this is their time and that they're prepared for the moment. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Moving on to the defense. Who needs to prove it on defense? I'm going to start with Broderick Washington. This is one where we paid him a couple of, I think it was last offseason, and we signed him to a 3-year, I think $15.75 million extension. And although he's, he just, to me, when I see Broderick Washington, I need to see an improvement. I do. I'm going to give you his, PFF stats real quick, and then I'll tell you kind of what I saw from him last year. PFF, he had 11 solo tackles. He had 6 assists, only 2 sacks, and no forced fumbles. Overall grade for Broderick Washington was a 43.8. A 43.8. So when I looked at Broderick Washington last year, nothing really wowed me. Nothing really stood out. And knowing that he just got paid last offseason, I expected to see more from him. I don't want to, and I read an article, I think it was maybe yesterday, I read an article where it said, Ravens who can possibly regress. And the first person they had on the list, Justin Madubuike. He just got paid, and usually, or oftentimes it's not unusual to hear or to see a player getting their bag, and then the next thing you know, they're MIA. We don't really see them. We don't see a contribution. And immediately I thought of Broderick Washington. So no, I'm not saying that that's going to happen with Justin Madubuike. No, we need to make sure he does not take a step backward. We need to see him continuing to propel forward and do great things because we absolutely need him this year. We need him in a big way. But for Broderick, I really want to see that number increase. If not this, solo tackles, that was 11 last year, then maybe increase the number of sacks. He had 2. So I took a look at PFF while I was there, and I said, well, let me look at some of the greats, some of the best to do it in the league in terms of last season. And I know they're not comparable. The names that I'm about to rattle off, no, I'm not saying that Broderick Washington is a Chris Jones or Broderick Washington is an Aaron Donald, because let's be real, let's be honest, they're in a class of their own. Those are top 1, 2, or maybe top 1 and 3. They're very high up there. So I compared Chris Jones. I looked at his numbers. Last year, he had 10 solo tackles, 6 assists. This is where it gets really good. 14 sacks. Overall, his rating was an 84.1. And again, I'm looking at Aaron Donald. I know you don't have to come for me in the chat or on the replay. They're not comparable, but I just wanted to see what's the rubric? What's the benchmark, right? Okay. Well, for Aaron Donald, it was, this is the kicker here. He starts out with a bang. 31 solo tackles, 13 assists, 10 sacks, overall 90.9. So for Broderick Washington, if I can see an improvement in one of those critical areas, if we improve the 10 solo tackles to 15, 20, that's great. Or if not, let's increase that. I'm sorry, he had 11 solo tackles. So if we can increase that to 15 or 20, great. But more importantly, what I want to see from Broderick Washington, this is why he made the prove it list. He had 2 sacks last year. I want to see more aggressiveness. I want to see an improvement in his ability to get after the quarterback and put that quarterback on the ground. That's what I'm looking for. So he made that list for that reason. I see my friend is in the house. I have to say hello to Don C. Thank you so much for being here. Good to see you. I hope you're well. Thank you. Thank you. And Don C is telling us on his list, he has Marlon, David Ajabo, Owe, and Washington. Is he vertically challenged too much to be an NFL safety? We're going to talk about those in just a minute. We're going to get right back into it because I have some of those on my need to prove it defensive list. We do. I think, we're seeing eye to eye here. The next person on my list, as Don C said, Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey. This is where I think he needs to be a leader. He is probably the oldest member in the secondary. We need to see Marlon less, how do I say it? Less silly, and more focused on showing, because we have a lot of young guys. We have a lot of young players this year in the secondary. And we'll take a look at the depth chart in just a few minutes. But Marlon Humphrey, I know he struggled with injury last year. I know that. And his level of play was not what it was or what we were accustomed to. And I don't expect it to be. He just had a birthday a couple of days ago. He's 28 now, I believe. You can fact check me in the chat, but I think he's 28. And we might not see the all-pro Marlo like we have seen or like we have become accustomed to. We might not. And that's okay to some degree. However, when I look at Marlon now, I'm looking at him from a different lens. I'm looking at him from the perspective of, you are here for a reason and a purpose. And obviously the purpose is for you to be productive on the field. It is. That's what we expect, and we're rightfully so to do that. But I also look for him, the intangibles matter too. That's where I want to see him step up. Last year, his stats, he had 27 solo tackles, 1 interception, 38 targets, and he allowed 19 receptions. That 19 number I'd like to see go down. I'd like to see the number of interceptions increase. That's what I'm looking for. So that's why Marlon made the list for me. I want to know and I want to see Is he truly focused? And is he ready to go? Is he healthy, number one? And then if that answer is yes, if he is healthy, is he ready to dial in, lock in, and contribute to this team and be the leader that we need him to be? So that's why Marlon Humphrey made my list. I read somewhere, before I move on to the next person, I read somewhere that the Ravens might really consider looking for a replacement for Marlon Humphrey. Not now, but perhaps next season. And I thought about it. I said, wow, especially if, I think the article went on to say, especially if he doesn't have a really good season. If his season is underwhelming this year, then the Ravens might consider, they might need to consider. It should be something that they take into consideration. They might need to think about it. So that's something I'm putting in the back of the recesses of my mind, and I'll revisit it later. I want to say hello to Nisha C. Good evening. Thank you for joining. I hope you are doing well. Moving right on to the next person I have on my list. See, I told you, Don C, I had several of the people that you mentioned. So good to know that I'm on the right track. David Ojabo. This is another instance of the Ravens drafting an injured player with hopes that eventually there'll be a return on investment. Eventually we will see payoff. And so far with David Ojabo, that really hasn't happened. And in 2 years, he's played 5 games. I think he played 3 last year and maybe 2 the first year. And coming off this ACL injury from last year, it's just not good. And in his limited time that he was on the field, he had 3 solo tackles, 2 assists, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, but he was graded a 59.0. And I know one thing we always say in football, the best ability is availability. So let's keep that in mind. And I remember earlier this offseason, Coach Harbaugh said, when one of the reporters asked, what's the status of David Ojabo? Is he healthy? Is he okay? And, John Harbaugh said, yeah, David Ojabo, he's okay. And he might be, he might possibly could report for training camp. He might possibly could. Do with that, make of that what you will. So we'll see if we have a healthy David Ojabo moving into this, training camp in a couple weeks. I'm a little apprehensive, but he can prove me wrong. The last 2 I put on this list, I didn't even separate them out. I lumped these 2 together because I just thought to myself, they don't need an individual, segment. I'm just going to bring those 2 and talk about them together. Pepe Williams and Jaylon Arma-Davis. Pepe has undergone 2 ankle surgeries and spent most of last season on injured reserve. Jaylon Arma-Davis, now he has played. He has. He played in 8 games last year. He had 4 solo tackles, no interception, only 3 targets and 3 receptions that were allowed. Overall, he was a 63.1, according to PFF. But now that during this offseason, now that we have lost some members in the secondary, Rock Ya-Sin, who never really panned out, and now he's in the 49ers, and then Ronald Darby to the Jaguars. I think Jaylon Arma-Davis is going to have to step up. I think we're going to allow for more playing time for him, and we'll see what he can do. He's got to prove it. And I think this time now is his to do just that. We also have Daryl Worley. I didn't put him on the list because he's a free agent. I don't know if the Ravens are going to bring him back. I don't know, but let's take a look real quick. I want to show you, but before I do, I want to say, pull up Don C's comment really quickly, and then a couple more things, and then we will be out of here. Yolanda B., your presentation is on point. The backgrounds are awesome. Oh, thank you so much for noticing. That's very kind. Yes. Don C., 2.5. Let me take a 2.5 and tell you, when I first started watching Ravens YouTube content creators, Don C. was one of the first to welcome me when I came into the chat. And so it's just, it's really nice to have his support, especially because, like I mentioned, I was just coming into the Raven space, and he was very, very welcoming to me. So that means a lot. So thank you. I don't take it lightly, and it's not lost on me. Let's have a look real quick of the Ravens. I want to take a quick glance at the Ravens depth chart. This is where I think we can really look to add some key pieces, or at least one key piece moving into the start of training camp. And we did it last year. We waited until the very end before we signed Jadeveon Clowney. And it wasn't until I think maybe a couple of weeks into the regular season where we signed Kyle Van Noy. And at the time, people thought, oh gosh, they're washed, they're older, what are they going to do? And look what they did. Look at their contribution. So I'm not going to count out the fact that, listen, there's still time. Even though it's late in the offseason, there is still time, and we can still bring some pieces in that might really help us #chase that Lombardi. So when I look at this, I see that, behind Marcus Williams at free safety, we've got Arma-Davis Washington. Okay, I think we're okay there. But when I look at the, left cornerback, we've got Marlon, and behind him, we've got Jaylon Arma-Davis. As I mentioned before, Jaylon Arma-Davis is going to have to prove it. And it could have been that Jaylon Arma-Davis just did not have enough playing time because of the amount of cornerbacks that we had in the roster last year. So it could be that, but we'll see. We'll see. But the one position that caught my eye, nickelback. At nickel, we have Arthur Maulet. Behind him, we've got Pepe. And we know Pepe has just not been available, hence the reason he made my list. Beyond him, we don't have anyone at depth. And earlier in the offseason, there was talks about Jamal being, I think it's Jamal Adams, being signed, like we brought him in. Oh, let's bring him in for a visit. He could, bring us some help and some depth at safety. No, thanks. And I think he signed today with the Titans. So that's one out there, but I know there's still other safeties that we can consider. But in terms of the depth I'm looking at for safety, sure, we can certainly bring one in, I think. But more importantly for me would be addressing the nickelback position. That's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of how we can really solidify the roster and improve moving forward into the remainder of this offseason. Last thing, just wanted to ask your thoughts real quick before we head out of here. Helmet. We got a new helmet. And what did you guys think of it? What did you think? When I first saw the helmet, I said, it's got to grow on me. And then I said, well, maybe it depends on how the Ravens, what uniform they match that up with. But I think it's really nice, but it's still got to grow on me. But let's see how they pair it up with, what uniform. Well, tickets went on, well, not on sale, but tickets were available today for they're not even having a stadium tour this year because of the renovations. But if you were able to snag one of the tickets for training camp, kudos to you. I tried and I was unsuccessful. So I will have to hear about it through the grapevine, AKA social media. So, well, thank you all so much for joining tonight. That is it for tonight's show. Make sure that you do me a huge favor on your way out. Please hit the like button and make sure that your post notifications are turned on so that you never miss videos and live streams, because I got stuff in the works. I sure am. I'm cooking some things up for you. So, just stay tuned, but make sure that your post notifications are turned on so that you never miss content that comes out on this channel. I appreciate you all. I'm going to say, take a couple more comments, and then we will get out of here for tonight. I keep saying that, but then I don't do it. So I got to be a woman of my word. We have my husband, Johnny. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, you're welcome. That's great. I'm glad and let me take 2.5. My husband is a Dolphins fan. Don't ask what the house looks like when we play the Miami Dolphins. Me being a Ravens fan and him being a Dolphins fan, it's one of those things. It was fine last year because we won. Now, 2 years ago when we didn't win, it wasn't all that great. Don C says he wants Nate Wiggins and Tampa to ball out and move Marlo to nickel. Ooh, There's a thought. Ooh, we might need to talk about that next time. Thank you. Thank you, Don C. I appreciate it. Thank you. Jose said that he likes the helmet. Okay. I mean, it's starting to grow on me slowly. And Don C said he loves the helmet and the color rush jersey combo. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. Great stream. Thank you, Don C. Thank you, Nisha C. Make sure to hit the like button for me. I will not take any more of your time. Let's be hopeful. Let's be optimistic. Let's keep our ears and our eyes open and see what these Ravens are going to do. They might just wow us in the last couple of, weeks in this offseason. Anyway, you all take care. You stay safe. And always remember, go Ravens. God bless.